Hey guys, welcome back to Philip's Hot Rod Garage. I really hope you guys have enjoyed those project updates over the past couple of weeks, talking about the body, talking about the chassis and the suspension. But tonight we're going to be talking about that Hemi engine and about the transmission that I plan to put into the car. So we're going to have part 3 of the project update. Also in this video, I want to completely finish the A-pillar. I'm going to get all the rust repaired in this A-pillar completely done. I don't see any reason for you to go anywhere. Just hang around. We're going to get a lot of work done. So I've been using this abrasive stripping disc. It doesn't take off a whole lot of metal, but it does a good job taking off that rust. Does not get down in the pits at all though, so I'm gonna switch over to this wire brush. So as you can see, conditions are not improving. The plan was to get this fixed in this video. As bad as that is, I got a lot of work ahead of me if that happens. I knew I had this rust hole here to deal with. I knew I had this under here to deal with, but none of these holes right here were there when I started cleaning that area. But hey, it's not time to complain. It's time to get it done. All right, so my original plan was to leave the A-pillar and the sub rail attached. There's 2 rivets holding them together. One there, one right up under here. I was gonna leave those attached, but after seeing all the damage that I've got to repair from rust, there's just no way I'm gonna be able to get in here and get all that cleaned up without separating that A-pillar from that sub rail. So I'm going to drill these rivets out so I can separate these 2 pieces so I can get in there to get it cleaned up. I think that'll be the best option. right, so now that I got the A-pillar loose from the sub rail, I gotta make some room to work. So I'm gonna take this monkey on a stick, use it to spread these pieces apart. All right, now I got some room to work. All right, guys, I got it clean enough I can start fabricating on it now. It's not perfect, but I'm gonna sandblast it all anyway, so I'll get the rest of this rust off then. I just need it clean enough I can do some welding. So I got the template from the passenger side. I'm glad I didn't throw it away. I think it's gonna be perfect for the driver's side here. Oh yeah, that'll work perfect. So I'm gonna get a piece of metal cut out this shape, get this cut out. I did not anticipate on having to do this on the driver's side. This honestly looked very solid, but that rust can be deceiving. When it's got surface rust on it and it's completely covered, you never know what you're gonna find until you start stripping it off. So it's really thin on the inside. It looks like the rust kind of stops here, but when you look on the inside, it's really deeply pitted from the inside all the way up into this area. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it all the way up to here. All right, it's gonna fit good, but I gotta curve it just a little bit. This panel's curved and the new piece is flat. So I gotta hammer a little bit of curve in it. All right, I'm not gonna get real sophisticated with this. Nothing fancy, just gonna put a slight curve in it the easiest way possible. Let's take a look at that. All right, that's actually perfect. Didn't take a whole lot to get that shaped correctly. So now I'm gonna mark it out, get the old piece cut out, be ready to start welding this in. All right, so I got that patch panel fitting pretty well. I'm gonna take that out and grind the mill scale off, and I'm gonna tack weld it in. All right, that patch panel turned out good. All right, guys, well, that mess I've been making, I had to stop and clean up for a second. Well, I'm gonna take a break from all this rust repair and talk to you about this Hemi. That's what we're all waiting for. All right, guys, so what I have here is a 1955 Desoto 291 Hemi, otherwise known as a whole lot of awesomeness in a little tiny package. You gotta admit, it doesn't get any more cool than an early Hemi. So the 291 cubic inch Hemi was 1955 only. Desoto had the 276 prior to this engine, and then after this engine they had the 330, the 341, and then the 345. The Fire Domes were rated at 185 horsepower from the factory, and the Fire Flight 4-barrel engine was rated at 200 horsepower from the factory. So anybody that knows much about these early Hemis knows that those horsepower numbers don't mean a whole lot. It's not that complicated to get 300 plus horsepower even out of these little small cubic inch Hemis. So here's my plan. I'm gonna have the block board, the crank turn, the rods resized. I'm gonna replace the pistons, have the rotating assembly balanced. I'm gonna switch the heads over from the 291 heads to a set of 330 heads. The 330 heads have larger ports and larger valves. Those heads are prone to cracking, so I have to have those checked for cracks. But if the 330 heads are good, I'm gonna put stainless steel valves in those, upgrade the valve springs, maybe do a little bit of mild port cleanup. Not really heavy porting on the heads, but just a little cleanup. I'm gonna have the camshaft reground. Nobody likes to build a hot rod engine without being able to hear that cam. So I'm gonna just have the original one reground. I'll stick on this engine with the flat tappet hydraulic setup. There are some folks that do rollers for these. The cores, those billet cores are hard to find, but there are some available. I think I can probably find one, but I'll probably just stick with that hydraulic flat tappet setup. It's a proven setup. It's lasted many, many years. I think it'll be fine. I'll do electronic ignition. And of course, you see I got the 4 2-barrel carburetors on here. Now this intake, this cost me dearly. I paid up for this thing. You just can't hardly find these 4.2 early YN intakes. They haven't made them in many, many years. And the carburetors I'm using on this thing are going to be these Stromberg 81s. These are the V860 flathead carburetors. The Venturi in them is a lot smaller than a Stromberg 97. So the engine is only 291 cubic inches. And with 4 carburetors, they don't have to be very big. So the Stromberg 97s are a little on the big side. So I'm going with these 81s. We'll move these out of the way so I can show you guys the intake. It's a really nice piece. No cracks, never been ported. Really nice intake. Like I said, not cheap at all. But if you want to play with this early vintage stuff, the really rare and neat stuff, it's going to cost you. But I'm telling you, I don't think you're going to get any better look under the hood of an open fendered hot rod than multiple carburetors. All right, another thing I'm going to do on this engine is I'm going to try to get rid of this oil cap and filler. I'm going to try to get rid of that, of course. And I'm probably going to switch over to an aluminum front timing cover. Hemi Hotheads makes a aluminum cover that uses a small block Chevrolet water pump. And I'll probably use an aluminum small block Chevy water pump with that aluminum timing cover. It'll take a little bit of weight off the front end. I've already taken a lot of weight off getting rid of this cast iron intake that was on here and going to this aluminum. These engines are really heavy. They need all the help they can get with lightening it up. But the main advantage to that small block Chevrolet water pump is it's supposed to take some of the length off the engine and make the engine a little bit shorter. What I'm going to try to do, and I believe I can, is I'm going to try to get this engine in this car without having to modify the firewall. I've been looking at some photos online and I've seen them doing it. I think you can get it in there in front of the factory firewall, and I'm going to put a 32 grill in front of it, and I'm going to try to use a mechanical fan. They didn't have electric fans in the old days, so very traditional car, mechanical fan is a must. Of course, I got to do a remote oil filter because the transmission adapter that I'll be using requires the oil filter to be moved because of the location of the starter. Speaking of transmission adapter, let me show you the transmission. Alright guys, so here's the transmission I'm currently planning to use. Now I said in the last video that I was planning on using all early parts as much as possible. The transmission is really the only place, other than a couple of other small things, that I'm really going to veer off from using all early parts. The reason why is because at some point in my life building hot rods, I swore to myself I'd never build another hot rod without an overdrive transmission. I just like to drive them too much. This car is not going to sit in the shop and just collect dust all the time. I'm going to be out driving it. I'm going to get on the road with it. I need a modern transmission with an overdrive that I can really get out on the road and depend on. Now, I know I got an early Hemi here, and people say, well, how can you depend on that? You need a later model engine. Well, that engine is just as dependable as any late model engine if it's built right. But the early transmissions just limit you as far as how you can get out and actually drive the car and use the car. So the transmission will be under the car. You won't see it. So everything that you see when you look at the car will be all early and all traditional parts. But I'm going to veer off from that on the transmission. I just got to do it. Now I was torn a little bit on it. I originally thought about putting an automatic in it. But guys, I've always wanted a really nasty, fenderless, chopped, hemi-powered stick shift hot rod. So that's what we're going with. Now to get this transmission connected to this engine, I've got to have an adapter set up. There's a company called Wheelcap that makes the perfect adapter setup for the 5-speed transmission to go behind the early Hemi engine. The adapter is designed to use the Ford original Mustang bell housing along with the Ford Mustang clutch setup, the clutch fork and everything. So it leaves the whole transmission set up just like it came from Ford all together. And I believe it also uses the Ford starter as well. So it's the perfect setup. Their adapter has the adapter plate, all the hardware, and it has a flywheel. That's a special flywheel that's made to go to the Hemi engine, but adapts it over to the Ford clutch. So that's a really nice setup that I'm going to be ordering soon. But one thing I'm going to be doing to this transmission to modify it is I'm going to be using the Chevrolet S10 tail housing. Now the tail housing from the S10 moves the shifter forward a pretty good bit on the transmission. That'll put the shifter coming out in a better location in the Model A, makes the shifter a little bit further forward of the seats like it kind of was originally on the original Model A setup. On the Mustang transmission, if you use the original shifter location, the shifter's just really far back and it ends up kind of being between the seats. I think the fabrication in the cowl area of the car is coming along pretty well, so it won't be too long until I'll be able to get a fixed position of where the body is going to sit on the frame Then I can put that engine and transmission in and get a good idea of where everything's gonna sit. Once I get to that point, this thing's gonna start taking off and things are gonna start looking a whole lot better really quick. And speaking of things looking a whole lot better really quick, let's weld this, do some grinder work, and see if we can get this patch panel finished. All right, it's time to grind. That's just too loud. All right, that's looking better. That left a mark. Ruined my glove. Well, I need to see how my finger looks. Yeah, that left a mark. It'll be all right. All right, that turned out real good. A whole lot better than this rusty junk. Look on the back side of this. That's why you have to cut it out and replace it. So the next thing I have to do is weld this under here. Then I got to come around here and weld this back here. Well guys, when I started this video, it was my intentions to completely finish this rust repair on this A-pillar. Things don't always go as planned. Unfortunately, this big patch panel on the outside cost me a bunch of time that I could have been spending on these couple of other areas I already knew was rusty. So it didn't go as planned, but hey guys, I appreciate you hanging out to the end of the video. I appreciate you subscribing. If any of you guys have any tips or any pointers on what I'm building here, maybe some of you guys have put a Hemi in one of these before, you've been down this road, hey, just send me an email, leave me a comment. I appreciate it. We'll pick up right there in the next one.